So now I'm sure you must be wondering, is he really going to talk about every single story here in The Flash issue number 750? Why, yes. Yes, I am. So, stick around. This first story is called Flash Age Part 1, and it's written by Joshua Williamson with pencils by Rafa Sandoval and Steven Segovia, inks by Jordi Tarragona and Steven Segovia, colors by Arif Prianto, and letters by Steve Wands. And this story begins with a man telling a tale about how he was down on his luck, decided to rob a bank, but ran into Heatwave. He then found himself outside, gunless, and next to a career center. We then get a recap / conclusion to most of the characters involved with the previous stories, including Steadfast and Fuerza going on a quest to understand their forces, Kid Flash going back to the Teen Titans, and Avery back to the Justice League China, with the Flash having given Commander Cold a proper burial, and of course, the Rogues are still on the run. And a quick recap of Pied Piper fixing the Speed Force temporarily, and the warning from future Barry about Paradox. And this is where I kind of want to make my first note. See, when it comes to Fuerza and Steadfast and the whole thing with the Battle of the Forces, from what that story told us, is that all the forces are basically in opposition to each other. Barry himself was losing speed due to the existence of these other forces. And during said story, it even prompted the Black Flash to come out and try to kill everyone that was not connected to the Speed Force, having even killed the user of the Sage Force, at which time Barry and the other speedsters started getting speed back. But then after Black Flash was defeated and the story ultimately concluded, it left both Steadfast and Fuerza still alive, still connected to their forces, yet for some reason, which we weren't really explained too much, they seem to be no longer affecting the Speed Force, and in fact, from the previous story, Rogue's Reign, the Speed Force actually became supercharged. So I'm hoping in future issues, Joshua Williamson will actually return to this idea and kind of clear it up a little bit. The second thing that I kind of want to take note is with the Rogues still being at large. Now, in the panel here, it's shown that all the Rogues are together, being led by Captain Cold, but from the Rogues Reign storyline, I am left a little confused on this because even though Golden Glider did go back for Captain Cold, because that is her brother, due to how far Captain Cold took things in the Rogues Reign storyline, the other Rogues decided not to follow him anymore, even going as far as teaming up with the Flash in order to take him out and return everything to what it once was. Which is why I'm a little confused at this particular panel that suggests that they are now once again following Captain Cold, as I have to wonder, did they all just kind of hash things out and everything's back to normal? Or is this teasing an upcoming story? At the Speed Lab, Barry and Iris are sharing an intimate moment when he gets called to a crime scene before we come to 2 pages of a little girl recounting a time when the Flash saved her and her entire class from Gorilla Grodd. Barry then arrives at the crime scene and finds a piece of broken glass with a rainbow accent, which Barry takes back to the CCPD crime lab, discovers who it belongs to, and manages to speed off and then back to the lab when his superior's back is turned. A police officer then bursts into the room and reports that Rainbow Raider has been dropped off up front, along with Barry telling his captain that they have sufficient evidence to convict him. And I thought this part of the story was actually really cool because we actually get to see Barry do a little bit of CSI work because he is a CSI, he is a detective. He's got crime-solving skills that even Batman at one point had suggested that Barry might be on par, if not better than him. And it's really a skill of his character that I wish would be explored a little more often. Soon after, Iris then comes in to meet Barry, who discovers her notes of various people telling their story about how the Flash had either saved or changed their life. As it's revealed, Iris is working on a story which Barry doesn't feel he deserves, admitting that for the past year, he's heard a voice in his head telling him that he's not good enough. Which is actually something that got teased all the way back in the Flash issue number 9. Something was affecting Barry, he was kind of going out of control, and we see him drop to his knees, and right off the corner, we see Zoom whispering in his ear. And just so you know, this is not the only occurrence of this happening, but we'll get back to that. Suddenly, Godspeed enters and mentions Paradox, in which Barry gives chase as he's led to the Flash Museum to discover that Godspeed has led the Flash to Paradox, who then tells the Flash that he hurts reality and people, and gives an ultimatum of stop being the Flash or watch everything he's built be destroyed. Naturally, the Flash chooses the latter, and Paradox orders Godspeed to kill the Flash as the 2 speedsters race towards each other. towards conflict. And overall, I really did enjoy this particular story. My only real complaints were what I had stated kind of in the beginning, particularly between Steadfast and Fuerza, because after that entire arc had happened, I kind of wish there was a little bit more of an explanation other than, well, they went off to go discover their powers a little bit more. Because also from my recollection, in order to protect herself from the Black Flash, Fuerza had even gone into the Strength Force, and we never actually saw her coming out of it. As well as wanting an explanation of why the Speed Force is no longer affected by the existence of the other forces. And of course, the Rogues readily accepting Captain Cold back as their leader. But I will say, it is awesome to have Godspeed back. He is actually one of my favorite characters from this current run. And I want to say, I kind of feel like as if Joshua Williamson has been setting up a redemption arc for this particular character, which now I'm wondering, if I'm right, could this be the arc that delivers that? The one who freed Paradox, brought Barry to Paradox. Maybe he's the one that's gonna save the day and take out Paradox. Or at least team up with Barry so that they can fight Paradox together, which anytime I see both Barry and Godspeed running together, it's really cool because I will say Godspeed's outfit it's just really cool to look at. I love the aesthetics of it. So hey, I think we're off to a good start in this issue. We now segue into the second story, Beer Run. This one is written by Jeff Johns with art by Scott Collins, colors by Michael Itea, and letters by Rob Lee. This story starts off with Captain Cold watching TV and drinking beer while narrating about why he's Captain Cold, which primarily has to do with his lack of respect for those with powers and that he and the other rogues are just trying to keep up with the powered types as best they can. Cold then finds out he's out of beer and heads to a nearby liquor shop to purchase more when a guy walks in who Cold pegs right away is going to try and rob the place. The two then pull their weapons on each other, in which the scared attendant hits a button to notify the police as she screams that Captain Cold is robbing the store, to which Cold seizes an opportunity to freeze the robber. The scared attendant tells Cold that he can take the beer, but Cold says that he's not robbing, but paying for it as he throws down some money as the police show up and Cold starts blasting. We then cut to Wally seeing a newspaper clipping that says Cold had blasted his way through the KCPD. Wally, in a conversation with Linda, tells her that the only reason Captain Cold does what he does is to spite him out of hate, as the story wraps up as it began, with Cold in his apartment, drinking beer and watching TV. And I'm just gonna say, I really enjoyed this story. I think it encapsulates the thought process of Captain Cold almost perfectly. It shows that although he's a criminal, he still does have a nice side. He has a code that he lives by, as evident from when the robber came in, which Cold took the opportunity to more or less stop that robbery and then still went in ahead and paid for the beer. I also really liked getting Wally's viewpoint at the very end of this book as he's telling Linda that he basically has Cold figured out, but really misunderstands him. I mean, he thinks Cold terrorizes Keystone City just because he hates the Flash, when in reality, Cold doesn't leave because that's his home, and also his favorite hockey team is there. And after reading the story, I instantly remember what I love about Jeff Johns' run on The Flash, because he seems to always be able to perfectly capture the dichotomy between hero and villain, which overall brings a much needed human element to all these characters. So, thumbs up, let's move on. Which brings us to the story, Why You? And this story is written by Francis Manipool and Brian Buccellato, with art by Francis Manipool and letters by Joshua Reed. And this story begins with Iris and Barry having coffee when she asks him, why does he need to be the Flash? Barry begins to ponder this to himself and decides to send his consciousness into the Speed Force in order to glimpse into other timelines in which Gorilla Grodd is the Flash, as he is seen helping a family, finding himself in a lab being an assistant of sorts to Iris, who is the Flash in this timeline, and Barry is in a relationship with Patty Spivot. And one final timeline where he comes across a kid reading the Flash New 52 comic moving forward, as this Earth has no Flash, but the kid fantasizes about it as he appears to have built a device to track lightning storms, saying he will always chase his dreams because that's what the Flash would do. Barry then returns to the present where Iris says she lost him for a moment, as Barry admits he was lost in his thoughts, but then answers Iris' question about why he needs to be the Flash, saying that realistically, it doesn't have to be him because anyone can be the Flash, but he is glad it's him. And this ends the story. And I got kind of emotional from this one a little bit. It was very fun, but it was also very heartwarming. It's one of those stories that shows that the Flash is more than just a man. The Flash is hope. He can inspire anybody. I mean, even in another timeline, Gorilla Grodd was struck by the Speed Force lightning and he became the Flash. But now I'm gonna say, let's talk about that consciousness thing. Barry Allen, inside of his mind, sent his consciousness into the Speed Force to glimpse various timelines about what it would be like if he was not the Flash. And that was actually a really cool concept. I like what was done with it. And it shows that the Speed Force definitely has other applications. And quite possibly, it's something I would like to see used in future Flash stories, maybe to kind of tell little Elseworld or what-if scenarios. You can definitely have a lot of fun with a concept like this. So yeah, I think we have another really fun and good story here. Which now brings us to The Flash of All Worlds. And this story is written by Marv Wolfman with art by Riley Rosmo, colors by Ivan Placentia, and letters by Darren Bennett. And this story starts off with the Flash chasing Mirror Master into a carnival funhouse where the Flash is at the whim of Mirror Master, in which Mirror Master makes the Flash small, then makes his head big, then turns him into a puppet, and then he thinks he's back to normal, where Mirror Master then sticks all of these various flashes on him like attack dogs. The Flash then starts insulting Mirror Master to get him to reveal himself, in which he does, and then the Flash is able to capture him and cart him off to jail. Short, simple, and nuts. Seriously, this story was bona fide bonkers. Just from the perspective of the art, which all the characters are already elongated and distorted prior to going into the funhouse. And now I'm really just imagining Marv Wolfman and Riley Rosmo kicking back in a chair and enjoying the finest weed in South Farthing.
Oh, truly, the finest weed in the South Valley.
And now we race into the next story at the starting line. And this one's written by Joshua Williamson with art by David Marquez, colors by Alejandro Sanchez, and letters by Steve Wands. And this story starts out with an intro and narration to the first Flash ever, Jay Garrick. He talks about how since he became the Flash, he's used his powers to help people, but recently Wonder Woman had shown him that the world is changing and they can't ignore the war going on, as it will eventually hit home, which then cuts to people being terrorized by the Thinker. And although he's going around and he's saving people, Jay can't help but remind himself of the horrors he faces and mentions how he considers sometimes hanging up the helmet, but then immediately remembers what his girlfriend Joan said, that even if he quit, it would only be temporary and he will be fighting the good fight when they're old and gray. It's then that we see someone whisper in Jay's ear, saying that they'll forget Jay Garrick and that he's seen the future. Ah, there it is, because that somebody is the Reverse Flash who whispered something similar into Barry's ear during the Flash issue number 9. See, it's all tying in now. What's it all mean? I don't know, we haven't gotten to that story yet. Jay then shrugs it off and uses his helmet to stop the Thinker and convinces himself that he needs to listen to the other voice in his head, the one that says the future will have good and bad days, but the future will need him, and he'll never run alone. And I actually found this story pretty interesting because it continues the setup of a story that Joshua Williamson has essentially been teasing from the looks of it, issue number 9. And now that we're so far into this particular run, we could be nearing the end, which means a resolution and a full-on explanation is hopefully coming. Maybe involving a story that's going to be told within the pages of The Flash. Maybe it could connect to the whole Generation Zero Free Comic Book Day issue. I also like really seeing Jay and the fact that he is popping up in stories a little bit more often now. One of the more recent appearances was in the pages of Justice League during the Justice Doom War, in which Barry Allen and the Green Lantern, they go back in time because they're trying to find the totality piece from that time period and end up coming across the JSA. And it's at that point that these two characters meet their counterparts, and there is a bit of familiarity going on as far as feelings go, but as far as knowledge goes of knowing each other, well, they don't. I think that the story is fun and really pumps me up for the road ahead. Which now leads us into the final story in this issue, and that is Flash Forward Epilogue. And this story is written by Scott Lobdell with pencils by Brett Booth, inks by Norm Rapmund, colors by Luis Guerrero, and letters by ALW's Troy Pateri. And this final story begins with Wally West in the Mobius chair recounting the past From joining the Teen Titans to becoming the Flash to losing his kids to the dark multiverse matter, mentioning Heroes in Crisis along with all of the other crises, and then watching time change with the Justice Society and the Legion of Superheroes reappearing. He also takes notice about the same events happening on the same world, just at different times, leading to his conclusion that time no longer aligns as he travels to Tempest Fugonaut and tells him that time, space, and reality are broken and risking collapse. This story starts to wrap up with Tempest asking Wally if he can undo the damage, and Wally giving a smirk saying he's got this. And I think that this story is fine, because it really just does equate to Wally West sitting in the Mobius chair, recounting aspects of his life, events that led him into getting into the Mobius chair, and then seeing and reiterating information that we kind of already know, that certain events are reoccurring on the same world, because, well, if you read Doomsday Clock, we know that Dr. Manhattan was always moving and shifting stuff around. So in that, I was expecting a little bit more to come from this story, but I will say I do like the end where Tempest does ask Wally if he can fix everything, and he just gives that big old smirk and is all like, I got this, bruh. I got this. Which that, of course, is going to go into the Generation Zero Gods Among Us Free Comic Book Day issue. In conclusion, I just want to say that The Flash issue number 750 is definitely a powerhouse issue. You've got both stories continuing and stories setting up bigger stories for the future, with a bunch of little fun side stories sprinkled throughout. Some of those stories which actually gave me a pretty good laugh. And I'm going to say that The Flash issue number 750 gets the epic gold medal. So The Flash issue number 750, have you read this book? I would love to hear your thoughts. Please leave your comments in the comment section below. And if you like this video, I'd love it if you'd smash that like button, share it with some friends. Subscribe if you're not subscribed already, and ring that notification bell for more comic book content. And if you're wondering what to watch next, consider one of these two videos. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Alright, take care, have a great day, and as always, stay geeky.